Keep yourself in the loop of everything football on the Golden State Media Concepts Football Podcast. The latest news on and off the field, be it college football, Big Ten, SEC, Big 12, Pac-12, ACC to the NFL. We've got you covered. Listen to the Golden State Media Concepts Football Podcast.
Thank you for tuning in to the GSMC Football Podcast, brought to you by the GSMC Podcast Network. I'm your host, Kendrick. My goodness, the sports world is on fire. One day, it seems like there's going to be no college football. And then the next day, oh no, there is going to be college football. And then the next day it's, well, we're 50-50. And the Big Ten is canceling their season. And then they're coming back and they're saying, no, we're just going to postpone it. And you got other colleges canceling their season. And other colleges are postponing. And the SEC is saying, no, we're going to have a season. There's no way we're not. And we got coaches coming out and speaking on this. Everyone's got an opinion on it. Of course, I do have an opinion on it. I do want to get into that. I don't want to really have any small talk or anything like that. I want to go ahead and get into this really quickly. So we got a lot of topics to talk about. Usually per segment, I only do one topic. I am going to split my first segment into two different topics because I do want to talk about both these things. And of course, I just there's a lot on my mind, basically. There's a lot on my mind. I want to get into college football being at stake. And I want to get into Russell Wilson because he's been getting a lot of pub this offseason, more pub than I have ever seen him get, and I have a prediction for this coming season. Cam Newton got disrespected in a list that CBS did. They ranked the best players by jersey number, and Cam Newton was not on this list, and you won't believe who they actually put at his list, on this list, who has this number. ESPN, they every year do a worst to first list. They got it wrong terribly last year. They got it wrong terribly this year. At least I believe they did. And then in the spirit of worst teams, I am going to predict the top 10 worst teams in the NFL for this coming season. Anyways. So I want to tell you guys a little bit about my concerns when it comes to COVID as it pertains to me. So, growing up, I ended up getting pneumonia. And not only did I get pneumonia as a small child, but I believe as a baby, I had RSV, which is a respiratory infection. So you could almost say, with common sense, that I am more at risk of COVID, especially on the side of COVID actually impacting me hard, because my lungs have had to deal with quite a lot, right? RSV and pneumonia is nothing to sneeze at. People die from pneumonia, and I had to battle it when I was like 3-4 years old. I was a little kid, and I was able to beat it, but I remember how sick I was. I felt awful. I had a lot of trouble at times breathing. I had a lot of fluid in my lungs. I was coughing up stuff all the time. And so with COVID-19 being what it is, I'm not going to lie to you guys when I say that it is concerning to me. It is very concerning to me. I do not want to get it. Because I don't want to tempt fate, right? Even, I haven't been sick in about 2 years, 2.5 years. I haven't caught anything. I would like to believe that my immune system has just gotten stronger, because I grew up also with a weak immune system. You could basically, book me in every single year to get sick. Cold season, flu season, whatever it was, you could basically book it. I was going to get sick. I haven't been sick in about 2.5 years. Even so, I don't want to just go to a beach. I don't want to just go to a bar. I don't just want to go to the mall. I don't want to do these things because I just don't want to tempt fate. There are people out there who have followed all the protocols and they've still gotten sick. There's people who have said they haven't left their home and yet they've still gotten it. They feel like it's literally airborne in their house. I just don't want to risk it. whenever I go to a store, whenever I go anywhere, even before masks were mandated, I wore a mask and I stayed away from people. And I did my best. I even did my best to take smaller breaths, trying to not just breathe in a whole bunch of air. I did my best to aim away from people. I just don't want to get sick. Those are my concerns, right? My family and I, we recently went to the beach. And we went to the beach because it's been really, really warm. We've been cooped up inside, essentially since the end of March. And we just wanted to get out. We wanted to go out and have some family time. Not gonna lie, I was a bit apprehensive to do it. Really wasn't sure I wanted to do it, but I ended up going out with my family. And we went to the beach, and there were, quite a bit of people there, but people were spread out. They were trying to be away from each other, but also there were a lot of people who didn't have masks on. And of course, I mean, there's some who are gonna say, like, oh, we're at the beach, we're not in a store, it's whatever, right? And I guess that's fine. I did bring my mask, and I also sat back as far away from people as possible. We tried to be away from everyone. Those are my concerns. I do not want to tempt fate. There's certain risks that I don't want to make sometimes. But with that being said, I have hung out with friends during COVID. I've been over to a friend's house a couple of times. I've gone on a couple of dates. So my encounters with people have been when I'm with just one other person. I don't really do these big groups. Beaches, malls, even like grocery stores. I hate being around big groups of people right now because I'm afraid that I could get COVID. And even though I'm younger, I just feel like I am more at risk because of what I've already had to deal with in my life. But when I've hung out with these people, I don't just go over and hang out. I ask them a multitude of questions. I'm like, when have you been wearing your mask? Have you been washing your hands? Have you been around a lot of big groups of people? When's the last time you went out? And then if they tell me that they went out like 5 days ago or a week ago, I ask them, I'm like, do you feel sick? Do you feel any of these things? And I have literally said, contact me in like a week or two and let me know how you feel and maybe we hang out. That's how I've been. And you can say I'm being extra about it. I'm just being cautious for myself because I want to live for a long time and have a good time, right? I don't want to I don't want to get this thing, and even if I was to recover, I do not want to be one of the people who all of a sudden has heart issues and liver issues and all these issues because of what it's done to my organs. But I have gone out and I have hung out with people. One person at a time. Let me just put it that way. I've gone and hang out with individual persons. Alright? I've had a friend over at my place. And when I did those things, I understood what the risk was, even though they told me that, they've been social distancing, they've been keeping themselves clean, they've been making sure they don't touch their face. Even though they tell me these things, I know there is the possibility that just, who knows, something happens. But I know the risk going into it. I made a conscious decision to go and hang out with my friend to watch some movies. I made a conscious decision to go on a date. I made a conscious decision to do those things because they were things I wanted to do, because even though things are different right now, I'm trying to return to some form of normalcy in my life. Right? I'm an adult. These are decisions I felt like making. So, I say that to say this. There's been a hashtag going around on Twitter, hashtag we want to play, and it's been tweeted out by like every single college athlete ever. Okay, not really. But Trevor Lawrence, Justin Fields, a lot of college football players have been taking to Twitter with this hashtag. And they're basically saying, we understand the risks of COVID. We know what this can do to people. And we've seen the reports, we see the studies, we are less susceptible to get it. And even if we do get it, it is less likely that it is going to affect us seriously the way it has affected other people. Right? Now, of course, there is always what could happen in the after effects of it. It has been shown to do damage to people's hearts and to livers and to other organs, right? There are these risks. But for the athletes, it has happened to them less. Their bodies are just conditioned better. They're stronger. They take better care of themselves than your average day person because they have to. So they understand their positions. While they could get it, they feel like they would be better off back at the facilities playing, where they would have access to COVID testing. They would be in some form of a bubble. They'd be training. They'd be, staying in shape. And let's be honest, and I think Lawrence, he did touch on this, a lot of these guys would be in better situations on campus than they would be even at their own homes. Right? We know that sports is an escape for a lot of people, right? We know that sports is an out for a lot of these guys to get a better life. There are multiple stories about the backgrounds of these guys. Des Bryant did not come from a great background. Shannon Sharp did not come from a great background. Hall of Famer. A lot of these guys did not come from great backgrounds. Very few people are Andrew Luck, who grew up in a wealthy family. Very few people are Steph Curry, who grew up in a wealthy family. Josh Rosen, to a lesser extent, and I say lesser extent because he's a third stringer in Miami. And at some point in time, I really do want to talk about Josh Rosen because of the story of him in the NFL. I think is just so sad. We haven't been able to see what this dude can really do because he's just not getting the opportunity to. But nonetheless, rich family in the NFL. Right? Those are not your typical stories in the NFL. Most of these guys come from like middle class to lower class backgrounds, impoverished backgrounds, living with friends, living with grandmas, like whatever. Some people no family even. And football was their escape. Some of these guys, they would be better off being on these campuses where they would have a room. They'd have a roof over their head. They would have food. They would have access to medical, COVID testing, training. They'd be with the boys. Now, of course, there is still an aspect of things that they need to take care of, right? I don't know if they'd be allowed to leave the campus. I've heard from these camps, they'd say that, no, they would have a bubble there on each of these campuses individually. I get that. My question would be, are they allowed to leave the campus? Because if they are, there is the aspect that would fall on them of wear your mask, social distance. Can you do that? And even though these guys are young adults, there is still a bit of that young immatureness in there. It is in there somewhere. Would they always remember to social distance? Would at some point in time, would they get carried away? And would they forget a mask? There is the possibility for that. But the players are saying that they understand the risks and they're willing to accept it. Now I get it. There's a whole liability issue and the NCAA does not want to get sued and these colleges do not want to get sued and it all comes down to money. Make them sign a waiver. I don't know. Just do something. I saw Joe Burrow. He took I want to get off this topic, but Joe Burrow, he took to Twitter, and I do believe I actually do have the tweet saved and everything. Joe Burrow, he took to Twitter and he said, "I feel for all college athletes right now. I hope their voices are heard by the decision makers. If this happened a year ago, I may be looking for a job right now." Joe Burrow, last year was his first year starting. His first and only year really being a starter. And he took off and had the greatest season by a college quarterback ever. When it comes to the opponents he faced, the numbers he put up, his efficiency, everything. And he became the number one pick. If this had happened a year ago, there would have gone his college eligibility, and he'd probably be looking for a job. Just he'd be an average Joe. Joe Burrow would be an average Joe. Alright? But no, he's Joe flippin' Burrow, because he got to play. For a lot of these guys, there are other people in Joe Burrow's situation where this is their first year starting and this could be their last year of eligibility. And if this season gets canceled for them, it just goes up in smoke. And they will be forced to go and get an average job. And of course, sometimes them's just the breaks. Sometimes that's just life. Life is not always fair. But the players say they want to play. Let them play. Figure out the liability issue later. Just supply them with COVID testing. And, I mean, damn. They want to play. Let them play. I want to go ahead and say this, though, really quick. Okay, so, when I say, figure out the liability thing later, I don't mean, put this off to the end of the season. I'm not trying to say it's not important, because it is, the way that they look at it, at least I'm assuming they look at it, is, since they don't pay these guys, they're kind of under the care of these universities and of the NCAA, and obviously if anything was to happen to them under these colleges' watches and under the NCAA, then they're going to be held accountable. So I guess an obvious fix would be to just simply pay them, right? The obvious fix would be to pay them. If they don't want to do that, though, I am just saying, man, just make them sign a basic waiver that says you're playing this season and you can't hold us liable for if you get COVID. I don't know. I mean, that's just what I would think would be the best thing. But you got these conferences canceling their fall schedules. Ohio State, it's crushed. It's a really, really messy situation, and I think all we can really do is just kind of hope for the best. But anyways, so when it comes to the MVP, a big part of winning the MVP is the narrative. Not only your individual success and not only your team success, it's about what's new. It's about what is the new hot story? What's the feel-good story? What can people really wrap their arms around? Tom Brady, a couple of years ago, won the MVP over Carson Wentz. Carson Wentz got hurt. He was the front runner for the MVP. They ended up giving it to Brady, not only because Wentz got hurt, but because the story of Brady. Oh, the Patriots. Look at how dominant they've been. Tom Brady, he's 40 years old, and they gave him the MVP, even though I don't believe he deserved it. On the NBA side of things, Russell Westbrook, he won the MVP a couple seasons ago because he averaged a triple-double and carried OKC into the playoffs. Well, the next 2 seasons, he averaged a triple-double again, and he never got close to even sniffing the MVP because the narrative had died down. It was no longer special. It was no longer something that everyone could just wrap their arms around as an incredible feat. With the NFL, this coming season, I look at the league, I look at the situation everyone's in, and I'm trying to figure out what is the new story? What is the story? What have people been wrapping their arms around? What is something that has been long overdue? And I honestly think this could be the year that Russell Wilson finally wins the MVP. They have, I think, the 13th ranked schedule. It's tied for the 13th ranked schedule in the league. Last year, Seattle was 11-5. They could have been 12-4. I think they won. I think they went 10-2 last year in one-score games, which is usually a stat that flips the next year. That's usually not consistent. But Russell Wilson, since he entered the league, has won 39 one-score games. It's not coincidence that Russell Wilson wins these things. It's because he is one of the best. He is either the second or first best quarterback in the league. Depends on if you just like his experience over Mahomes. And Russell Wilson just knows how to get it done. Let Russ cook is the hashtag on Twitter that people are always, that analytics guys are tweeting, that Pro Football Focus tweets, Warren Sharp, all the guys who are super into the analytics of football tweet out, let Russ cook. That is the hashtag. I think this is the season that Russ cooks. I think this could be the season that Russell Wilson does win the MVP. Now, am I predicting him to win it? No, because he hasn't even gotten a single MVP vote, which is ridiculous. Derek Carr has gotten an MVP vote before Russell Wilson. DeMarco Murray has gotten an MVP vote before Russell Wilson. Ezekiel Elliott has gotten an MVP vote before Russell Wilson. That is how ridiculous it is. The disrespect Russell Wilson has received is immense, but this offseason is the most pub I have seen Russell Wilson get in a long time. He was ranked number 2 on the NFL's top 100 players list. I think that actually does matter because he had never cracked the top 10 before. His highest ranking ever had been 11, and last year he was 25. And there were not 24 players better than Russell Wilson. You look at NFL.com, they ranked their top 30 players age 30 and above. Russell Wilson was number 1. I looked at Seattle's schedule, and while I do know they like to make games tougher, I think Seattle will finish once more in the double digits. I think there's a chance they start the season either 5-1 or 6-0. And then, they get some tough games after that, but Russell Wilson is a gamer, and they've got good pieces on offense that Russell Wilson has good chemistry with. Obviously, he knows Pete Carroll. They have a good back end, solid linebacking core on the defense. It's the defensive line I'm concerned about, because it's ranked 32nd in the league. The offensive line still isn't that great, but it's interesting. They've got some new pieces that I think are going to fit in nicely. But I really do think this could finally be the year that Russell Wilson does at least receive, at the bare minimum, a MVP vote. Right? I don't know if they'd want to give it to Patrick Mahomes, not Patrick Mahomes. I don't know if they'd want to give it to Lamar Jackson again. If he has the same kind of season and they have the same kind of record, I'm honestly not sure the writers are going to want to give it to him, because they might themselves consider what happened last year in the playoffs and the fact that Lamar Jackson is 0-2. I don't know if they'll want to give it to him, even though I think there's a real chance that they repeat the same kind of success. And would it be as cool of a story if Lamar Jackson, he dominated the league again, and he won the MVP? I don't know if that's really the story they want. Patrick Mahomes, right? Do they want to wrap their arm around? Well, we've already seen that. Russell Wilson is a lovable guy. He always says the right thing. He's got a beautiful family, beautiful children. He has everyone. If any right-thinking person knows, he has been disrespected for years in the NFL. I really think this could be that. This is the story people could wrap their arms around. This is the year Russell Wilson finally got the respect he deserved. He got it in the offseason. It translated into the NFL season, and he won the MVP. I think this could finally be the year, and I'm really, really looking forward to it. I hope that he is able to at least get a vote. If he doesn't, I'm gonna riot. That's just me personally, though. I'm gonna riot. I don't know about you, but I will be protesting in the streets of Seattle if Russell Wilson does not get an MVP vote this year. Assuming the Seahawks are good, right? If they're 4-12 and it's just a debacle, okay, don't give it to them. But if they're, again, like 11, 12 win team, why not? His stats are going to be good. His stats they always look good. I just give it to Russell. Why not? Just give it to Russell. At least give him a single vote. Anyways, coming up next, Cam Newton has once again been disrespected. This time it was by CBS with a list that they came out ranking the best players by jersey number. I'm going to get into that coming up next.
Listen up, sports bettors. This is Bryson Ethan here to tell you about our favorite sports book, and that's BetUS. Football, basketball, and baseball are all back, and that means it's time to get down your bets. We only endorse one sports book, and that's BetUS.com. Why, you ask? BetUS is the pioneer in online betting with more than 25 years in the biz. You need a sports book with integrity and longevity, and you need to know that you're going to get paid.
That's right, Bryce. You need a sports book that offers everything, including live betting, MMA, golf, horses, esports, entertainment of all kinds of crazy prop bets and future bets. So call today at 1-800-MY-BET-US. That's 1-800-MY-BET-US, and they'll walk you through on just how to get started. Nobody in the industry gives bigger bonuses than BetUS. Join now, mention GSMC, and you can get up to 150% in bonuses on your first deposit. Nobody can beat that. We bet at BetUS, and so should you. Join BetUS today. That's BetUS.com or call 1-800-MY-BET-US. Mention GSMC to get 150% in bonuses on your first deposit.
Are you looking for help for your fantasy football team? Check out the GSMC Fantasy Football Podcast. Get today's best advice on who to start, who to sit, even who you should draft. From sleeper picks to red hot lineups, they got it all covered for you. That's GSMCpodcast.com/fantasy-football-podcast. We'll cover traditional leagues, dynasty, PPR, even IDP leagues. When you need fantasy help, there's just one show to hit up. Don't forget to like them on Facebook and follow them on Twitter. Visit GSMCpodcast.com for more info.
Welcome back to the GSMC Football Podcast. Last segment talked about college football and Russell Wilson. Look, again, when it comes to college football, these players, they want to play. If they want to play, if they understand the risks, they just want COVID testing. Just make sure you're taking care of these kids. And as long as they want to play, what is there to talk about? What is the concern? Quit fearing liability. Quit fearing that stuff. If they want to play, they want to play. Alright, they understand the risks. It's not like you're tricking them into anything. Trevor Lawrence, Justin Fields, whoever. If they say they want to play, man, let them play. Anyways, so every single year, there's these lists that come out, right? Around the same time every single year, these lists will come out, usually by the same network. CBS does this thing where they rank the best players in the NFL based on jersey number. So they basically go 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and so on and so forth. And then whatever player wears number 1, number 2, number 3, they look at all the players in the league that wear that number, and then they take whoever the best is of the bunch, and that is the best player with that number. So, of course, at number 1, a lot of people would think you would say Cam Newton. For the longest time, it has been Cam Newton. Because he can run, he can throw it, he's a big, strong athlete, he is like one of the ultimate dual threat quarterbacks. Michael Vick has gone on record saying that he wishes he had Cam Newton's size to go along with the speed that he already had. Right? Because Michael Vick was a much smaller framed guy. The hits he took hurt him a lot worse. Cam Newton's a bigger dude. He can absorb more punishment. Now, while that has been kind of to his detriment, obviously, as his career has gone on, I'm sure he regrets taking some of those hits. The point is that he has still taken many shots that Michael Vick really probably, his body wouldn't hold up to, right? Let's just put it that way. But I'm expecting to see at number 1. For me personally, I was expecting to see at number 1 Cam Newton. To my surprise, it wasn't Cam Newton. They had Kyler Murray as the best player in the NFL to wear number 1. And in a quote underneath it, on some of these they put quotes on just, kind of to justify why they put a player here or who was also in the running for it. Here was their quote. They said, "This might still be owned by Cam Newton, but let's not kid ourselves. In 2020, Murray is the better and more exciting QB." Exciting. I don't want exciting. I want a dude who can play. I don't know if I think Kyler Murray is more exciting, necessarily. When I watch Cam Newton play, my eyes are still glued to the TV. I love watching Cam Newton play. I think it's fascinating. And as for the better quarterback, what are we judging better on? Because if we're going to go off of last year, if we're going to strictly go off of this last year, then sure, Kyler is better than Cam Newton. Cam Newton played like 2 games, got hurt, was dealing with an injury already, and he missed the whole rest of the season. So if we're going to go based off of that, then okay, CBS, Kyler Murray is better than Cam Newton. Here was Kyler Murray's rookie season. So he threw 3,700 yards, had 540 rushing, 24 total touchdowns to 14 total turnovers, 64.4% completion percent, 6.9 yards per attempt. His Pro Football Focus rank was 29th. He had a grade of 64. So, I mean, by his grade, he was like a D, and his 29th rank, that puts him almost at the very bottom of all qualified quarterbacks. Of the 32 starters, he was better than 3 of them. He had a better rushing grade than passing grade. So, is he a running back disguised as a quarterback? No, I'm not going to go that far. But just for the sake, I mean, he had a better rushing grade than throwing grade. That's usually not what you want your quarterback to have, right? You want your quarterback to be a better thrower than runner, and that was not the case for Kyler Murray last year. Now, Kyler Murray also had some other faults, on top of him being mobile, which is great for him, and it's great to fit today's game. He also ran himself into a lot of pressures. His offensive line is not good. I did mark that, they lost their starting right tackle. He opted out of the season, and while he's an older tackle, he's still shown to be very good. They're gonna miss that. They didn't even really get to have it last year. But Kyler Murray, I think other than Deshaun Watson, he ran himself into the most pressures and sacks. So Murray, he still needs to kind of learn how to really function around the pocket. But that was his rookie year. Cam Newton obviously didn't really get to play last year. He played 2 games. He didn't look good in either. I don't even remember if he finished the second game. I just know his numbers were not good through 2 games. He had like no touchdowns and a pick. I think he had like 500 something yards. It wasn't good. His shoulder was messed up, his foot was messed up, he had a whole bunch of issues that just kind of went untreated or misdiagnosed, and now he's finally getting back to feeling right. Cam Newton, the last time he was even remotely healthy, let's just go back to his 2018 season. That season, he played 14 games, because in that season he also got knocked out by injury, but that season he played 14 games. Here were his numbers through 14 games, as compared to Kyler's 16 his rookie year. 3,400 yards passing, 500 yards rushing, 28 total touchdowns, 13 turnovers, 67.5% completion percentage, 7.2 yards per attempt. His Pro Football Focus rank was 23rd in the league, and he had a grade of 71. Does that really sound like a worse quarterback? And let's not forget, when Cam Newton started that season, through the first 8 games of the season, what were the Panthers? 6-2? Like second in their division? They were rolling. Cam Newton was having a career year. He was one of the top graded quarterbacks in the NFL. I think he was a top 10 quarterback through that point of the season. And then his shoulder got hurt. It became noticeable how different he was playing. And his grade did take a hit, his production took a hit, but he was having a career season that year. Right? He was on pace to have, I think, the best year he had had since his 2015 campaign in which he won the MVP. Let's not do this recency bias, okay? Let's not do this recency bias thing. Cam Newton, I still think, is better than Kyler Murray. I would still probably take Cam Newton. If I had to pick for like a season, I'd probably say Cam Newton. Now for the long run, I will probably go with Kyler, because he's younger, has less of an injury history. I'd probably go ahead and go with Kyler. But for one season, if I have an established team and I'm looking for like, who's that piece that can put us over the top, if I'm like, we have all the weapons, we have got protection, we see the quarterback, I will take Cam Newton before I take Kyler Murray. But that's just me. I'm sure there's some Kyler Murray fans out there who love him, and they would have no problem taking him over Cam. It might just come down to the personal flavor, right? Cam Newton has rubbed a lot of people wrong. Kyler Murray so far has seemed to, he's just a really nice kid. A lot of people like Kyler Murray. With that even being said, though, Cam Newton, I think this might not be the season to prove that point, though, right? I think that this season could kind of prove what I'm saying right now to be moot. Because I would not be surprised if Kyler Murray has a better season than Cam Newton, especially statistically. You just look at the weapons that Kyler Murray has. On top of having Larry Fitzgerald already, and having already had a Christian Kirk who's an emerging receiver, and having Kenyon Drake, they all, and a head coach and offensive coordinator that is tailored to what he likes to do and does really, really well. He also now has DeAndre Hopkins, who they are working on a contract extension for, so he is going to be there with Kyler for probably until the end of DeAndre Hopkins' career. So Kyler Murray has Kenyon Drake, who really fit their system last year. He beat out David Johnson, who at least at one point in time was looked at as a top 3 back in the NFL. Beat him out. He fits the system great. They've got 2 of the most sure-handed receivers in the NFL and in NFL history with DeAndre Hopkins and Larry Fitzgerald. Christian Kirk, who's an emerging player. I don't exactly remember who they have at tight end. But nonetheless, their receiving core is outstanding, and you can say is probably at least a top half of the league receiving core. Cam Newton, on the other hand, what does he have? Julian Edelman, who led the league in drops last year, who was all banged up. Now, of course, this year says he's feeling much better, feels like himself, and he's looking to prove some stuff. Mohamed Sanu, who was banged up last year, but is kind of a lot like Julian Edelman, just probably even slower. N'Keal Harry didn't do anything last year, didn't even look like he could really play. He looked slow, couldn't get any separation. We'll see what he does here too. Sometimes it takes some time for a rookie to get it, and I don't think it helped that you then look at like what A.J. Brown and DK Metcalf and Terry McLaurin did. They were all outstanding their rookie years, so that didn't really bode well for N'Keal Harry. Darius Slayton with the Giants was outstanding, so it didn't really bode well. I will give N'Keal Harry the chance though. Let's see what he does. Jacoby Myers was, I think, at one point the highest graded receiver in the preseason last year, and then he did nothing his whole rookie year. Just he didn't do anything. At tight end, I have no clue who their tight end is. I've seen that they're thinking about maybe possibly bringing in Delanie Walker. I think at this point anything is an upgrade, and if Delanie Walker is healthy and even remotely what he was back in 2014, 2015, 2016, then he is one of the, at least a top 10 tight end in the league. Can run, can catch, sure-handed, is fast. Like, he could still be really, really good. And so I think he and Cam Newton would be great to work with. At running back, they brought in Lamar Miller. He missed all of last year with a torn ACL. And other than him, it's James White, Rex Burkhead, Sony Michel, who got put in the doghouse. I think they drafted a running back last year, Damian Harris. I might be getting the first name wrong, but Harris, who kind of got, I don't know, he got like a red shirt rookie year, basically. So I don't really know. Their offensive line isn't as good as it was. They lost Marcus Cannon. I mean, the deck is stacked against Cam Newton this year. So after this season, what I'm saying right now could look really stupid. There's a lot of people who could say, Kyler Murray, his numbers were exponentially better than Cam Newton, because he has guys who can stretch the field, who know how to create separation, who are all pro level receivers. What does Cam Newton really have? I get that. My whole thing with Cam Newton, the expectations for Cam Newton this year, I really do feel should be just fit in the system, don't cause any disruptions, look competent, keep the Patriots looking competitive, be your best, put your best foot forward, be a soldier on the field. And if all goes well, I think Cam Newton will get a shot somewhere else. I don't know if I would see him necessarily lasting in New England because of the weapons that they have there. Cam Newton himself might see the kind of weapons he has there next season and go, I don't know if I want to come back to this. I don't know. Maybe the Patriots would think about franchise tagging him. I really have no clue. But I do not think this is the year to judge Cam Newton based off of his statistics. Now, I'm not one of these people, though, also, who overblows some of Cam Newton's missteps. And he's had some, right? He had the comments he made to a female reporter when she asked about, I think it was Devin Funchess, and asked Cam what he thought about his route running, because he looked like he was running more aggressively with his routes or something like that. And Cam thought it was funny, and he said something like, it's just interesting to hear a female talk about routes. That wasn't a great comment. He should have kept that to himself. That was something maybe you just think to yourself and you don't say out loud. Obviously, you have some comments he made on race. One day he says he doesn't understand how 1/8 of an inch can cause so much drama, or can cause so much fear or anger for people. And then the next day he says, "I'm a black man in America," and that scares some people. He's not sure. He was afraid of what to say. Obviously, at the Super Bowl, he walks out of his press conference. People call him a sore loser. I don't know, show me a good loser. Who likes to lose? They almost had an undefeated season that got ended, and then you're in the Super Bowl against a quarterback in Peyton Manning who could barely throw the football anymore, and you lost. Because Denver's defense was just insane. And Cam Newton to this day probably still beats himself up for not jumping on the fumble. I'm not going to hold that against him. Cam Newton's time in Carolina, he was very charitable. He was a great person in the community. This last year, he was the Panthers nominee for Walter Payton Man of the Year, which is a prestigious award, and many people believe is the most important award, really, at the NFL ceremonies and everything. Cam Newton is not some bad guy. Does he go out there on the field when things are going great? Does he like to boast, and does he like to, flaunt and do a dance and everything? Yes, he does. But there's a lot of players who like to do that. When you train as hard as these players do to be at the best of their game every single week to play, man, you get to celebrate. You get to go out there, do a coordinated celebration. You get to do a dance. Now, I am all about backing it up and making sure you keep that same energy, but I am not one of these people who believe that because a player celebrates, that there's some bad guy. That has never been me. I've never thought that. I want these players to have personality and to speak. Now, I want them to speak eloquently, and I want them to know what they're talking about. But, man, I'm not going to hold that against Cam. I won't hold how he handled his press conference against him. None of that. But, man, people are so hard on Cam Newton. They are so hard on him. And I'm not going to get into some of the reasons as to why I think some people are hard on Cam Newton than other people. But what I will say is this. This season, I don't think people should be expecting the Patriots to go to the playoffs. I don't think people should expect the Patriots to be the worst team in the league. I think what people should expect from the Patriots is for them to be competitive. I think people should expect them to look functional. And I think that specifically for Cam, what you hope for Cam is that he is a good soldier. For the most part, basically, keeps his mouth shut, keeps his name out of the headlines. The only thing that should be making the headlines is his play, and hopefully it's for good reasons. Hopefully his play is good. Hopefully the Patriots can just be competitive. I even said that before the Patriots started losing all the players they did to opt-outs. I was saying the biggest thing for me is I just want to see them look competitive. If this team looks garbage, that doesn't look good for Cam or even for Bill Belichick. I think it looks worse for Bill Belichick. But, CBS. Kyler Murray is not the best player in the league to wear number one. I still think it's Cam Newton, and I gave you guys the 2 seasons. I mean, yes, technically between the 2 seasons, did Cam Newton have less passing yards and less rushing yards? Yes, he did, but he also played 2 fewer games. But in those 2 fewer games, I mean, you just look at the completion percentage between the two. Kyler Murray was a 64. Cam Newton was a 67. Their yards per attempt 6.9 to 7.2. Their grades was 23 to 29. Their actual grade overall was 71 to 64. Cam had more touchdowns in fewer games. He had less turnovers in fewer games. Just stop it. So let's stop with this recency bias. And more importantly, can we stop being so hard on Cam Newton? I mean, my God. He seems focused. He seems ready to bring it this year. He said he is tired of the disrespect. Now, Derek Carr, if anyone should be tired of the disrespect, it's Cam Newton. I believe if anyone should be tired of it, it should be Cam Newton. Because he has always been treated like he is worse than he really is. Both on the field and off the field. He's been treated like he's a worse player than he really is and a worse person than he really is. And for CBS to rank Kyler Murray ahead of him because he's more exciting is ridiculous. And it doesn't make any sense to me, and I will just not subscribe to that philosophy of thinking. Again, I think Kyler Murray this season, he could put up better numbers. I think he's in a better position to put up better numbers. Record-wise, I don't know about that. Maybe the Patriots would still be able to finish with a better record because it's Bill Belichick and they have a better defense still than the Cardinals do. But I'm not with that. Cam Newton to me is better than Kyler Murray. And I'm excited to see, I am more excited to watch the Patriots this coming season than I am the Cardinals. But that's just me. Anyways, coming up next. ESPN, they did a worst to first list. I want to talk about that because I do not agree with who they picked for the second straight year to be the top team to possibly go from worst to first. And stay tuned, my final topic of the day, in the spirit of worst teams, I am going to predict who the top 10 worst teams will be for this coming season. That later, stay tuned.
Check out the show that's built on the MMA. From the UFC to extreme cage fighting, they got the fights covered. Check out the GSMC MMA podcast. Get the latest news on past or upcoming fights. Join us as we talk to and about some of the biggest names in the MMA, past, present, and future. When it's the fight game, there's just one show to check out. GSMCpodcast.com/MMA-podcast. Don't forget to like them on Facebook and follow them on Twitter. Visit GSMCpodcast.com for more info.
Welcome back to the GSMC Football Podcast. Last segment talked about disrespect aimed at Cam Newton. I just don't understand it. People are burying Cam Newton. Some of it is for his on the field stuff. Some of it is for the off the field stuff. I don't quite get it. I think Cam Newton is still the best player in the league to wear number 1. I don't think there's anything to really back up that Kyler Murray is better than him. That is just my opinion. Again, if I wanted to go forward with a franchise, I'd probably take Kyler because he's younger, has less injuries. But right now, if I had a team ready to make a run, Kyler or Cam, I will take Cam. But anyways, so ESPN did a worst to first list. They do this every single year. They predict the team that they think is going to go from worst to first. Last year, they predicted the Lions. The Lions went ahead and they stayed worse. This year, they have once again picked the Lions. Again, I'm going to need someone to tell me what exactly it is that they see in Stafford. People, they keep geeking over his start to last year and the fact that he was a top 10 quarterback. I think he might have even been top 6 when it came to his Pro Football Focus grade, his QBR and everything. They were 3-4-1. With Matt Stafford performing out of his mind, they were 3-4-1. What are we flipping over, right? 3-4-1. Oh, how great did the Lions look? Well, then he got hurt, and then, of course, the Lions season fell apart. They ended up trading Darius Slay. Darius Slay came out and excoriated Matt Patricia as a head coach and said that he does not like him. He has no respect for him. He doesn't have any respect in that locker room. And Matt Patricia's record with the Lions is 9-19-1. The only area of the Lions that you can realistically say have gotten better is that their defense is better at tackling. In his first year as the head coach, the Lions went from one of the worst teams in the NFL at tackling to like top 5. If not top 5, it was top 10. They were significantly better. So, I mean, you can say that they've gotten better in that area, but they're not winning anymore. There's people who still think they should have fired their last head coach. Who was it, Bob Quinn? People still think they shouldn't have fired him. They don't, but, you know, a lot of teams out there, they love the Bill Belichick tree, even though now I think at this point, it's kind of died down. It's lost some of its mystique because they just don't seem to be working. But they ended up signing Matt Patricia. So far, it doesn't look like it's going good, and I can honestly see them firing him after this year. But once again, ESPN has picked the Lions to go from first to worst. Let me just talk about their division real quick before I talk about which team I think has the real shot to go from first to worst. I don't think it will happen, but I think they have the better shot. Let's just think. The Packers. Do we really think the Packers are going to fall off a cliff? The Lions have tied for the 5th hardest schedule in the league. Again. Let me just preface that. Let me just start. They have the 5th toughest schedule. Matt Stafford already doesn't really beat winning teams. So let's just go ahead and count the Lions out immediately. I even think in the article ESPN said they don't think the Lions are going to go worst to first. They just think they have the best chance. That doesn't even make any sense. And I'm talking about the fact of them just saying that they don't even, they think they have the best chance. I really just don't think that makes sense. But the Packers, they were 13-3. Their team didn't really lose anything. It didn't really gain anything. What it did gain is a pissed off Aaron Rodgers. So I really do think the Packers are probably going to finish double-digit wins again. They'll probably win the division. The Vikings, what'd they do? I mean, they lost Stephon Diggs. Their defensive line outside of Danielle Hunter isn't really that great, but their offense is still intact. While they did lose their offensive coordinator, Kubiak is still there, Zimmer's still there, Kirk's there. I mean, they still got Thielen, they drafted a first round receiver, they still got Rudolph and Smith. The back end of their defense is still solid with the two safeties, their linebacking core is still good. I think that the Vikings are almost kind of set to finish second in the division. For the Bears, their defense is still really good. They still have a smart play caller in Matt Nagy. I don't think last year was his best year calling plays, but I think a big part of it was that he didn't know what to do with Mitch. I think Mitch just took a step back. He didn't look the same, and he was trying to compensate and make the play calling easier, and in doing so, it made it predictable. But I think Nick Foles is probably going to start. So, I mean, the Bears, they could finish probably second. I would pick them to finish third. So, I mean, what are we doing with the Lions? The Lions have been the worst team in that division for years now. It's not changing. And I especially don't think it's changing under Matt Patricia. I just don't. The team that I believe that people should really be looking out for to have the best chance to go from worst to first, I think it's the Chargers. The disrespect to Tyrod Taylor is just ridiculous to me. I think I talked about it a couple podcasts ago. I mentioned the fact that he had a overall on the newest Madden in the 60s, which is not even a starter in that game. But they have him at like a 64 or something like that, which is just so disrespectful to Taylor. As I think I've talked about, in Taylor's 3 years starting with the Bills, I think his worst ranking was 15th in the league when it came to his Pro Football Focus grade. The other 2 seasons, he was a top 10 quarterback. Taylor, he's not going to be a guy who wows you with the passing yards. He'll never be that guy. He's never going to be the guy who's going to wow you with his arm talent and making incredible throws, completing 70% of his passes. He will never be that. But what Taylor is he's an elite athlete. You can easily run some kind of scheme with him, similar to what the Ravens do with Lamar Jackson. What I think that the Raiders are going to do with Marcus Mariota, because, and I'll get into this later, I think the Raiders are going to make a quarterback change mid-season. I think that they will. But in terms of the Chargers, I don't think they're going to want to really start Herbert. I just don't think they're going to want to. Could they? Yeah, they could. But will they? I honestly don't think they will. I think they're going to have Taylor go ahead and finish this season out, and I think the Chargers could be really, really good. They have the 23rd ranked schedule in the league. They have a very easy season. Through 9 games, I looked at their schedule, I think that the Chargers could be 6-3 through the first 9 games. I really think they could be 6-3. They face the Bengals, that's a win. They face the Chiefs, that's a loss. They face the Panthers, I would take them to win that game. They take on the Bucks, I'll say that's a loss. Saints, that's a loss. But then it's Jets, Dolphins, Jags, Raiders. And remember, they take on the Raiders twice. Against the Broncos, I think they'll probably split it. And I think they could win both because the Chargers defense. Can we just talk about their defense for a second? Their defensive line. Joey Bosa on one side, Melvin Ingram on the other. Against the Broncos, they lost their top tackle, and their offensive line already wasn't that great. So, I mean, Bosa and Ingram, they're going to wreak havoc on that offensive line. And Drew Lock is not a mobile guy. I think they could beat the Broncos twice, but I would say that because of Denver's defense, they'll probably split the games. But on their defense, just in general, Bosa, Ingram, and they have by far and away the best secondary in the NFL. Hayward, Desmond King, Chris Harris Jr., Derwin James. I mean, what are we doing? Their linebacking core is not great. I think their linebacking core could be much, much better. That's probably the weakest point of their actual defense. But pass rush and coverage, those are like the two most important parts of your defense. And they've got A pluses everywhere. What on earth are teams gonna do to their defense? And on their offense, I don't really like their offensive line. I think that is the weak point. They traded Okung. They ended up getting Trey Turner. If Trey Turner can return back to his 2015-16 form, when he was one of the top guards in the league, that'd be great. But other than that, Hunter Henry is back on the franchise tag. He's struggled to stay healthy at times, but when he's healthy, it's kind of the Tyler Eifert effect. When he's healthy, he's one of the greatest tight ends in the NFL. But the thing is, he just needs to stay healthy. But on the outside, you still got Keenan Allen. Of course, you can peg him to probably miss a game or two every season, but he is one of the best receivers in the league. You got Mike Williams on the other side, who's a great 50-50 ball receiver. He is outstanding when it comes to contested catches. Their running back stable is great. Yes, they lost Melvin Gordon, but Austin Eckler, when he was performing as the starter last year, he was the number one graded running back in the NFL. Whether it's running the football or receiving, he is elite in both facets. He was an undrafted player as well, so I mean it doesn't bode well for drafting running backs high in the first round, though I'm not saying that team shouldn't do it. But the Chargers are stacked. And you look at their division. The Raiders, the Broncos, and the Chiefs. The Chiefs, now obviously they're going to win that division again. I don't think there's going to be some Super Bowl hangover. I think they're going to be fine. But the Raiders, I think they're going to be bad this year. The Broncos, I don't like the fact that they lost their top tackle. I don't like that. Especially because Drew Lock's not a mobile guy. So I really do think that could seriously impact this team. So I would probably say Denver will finish third in that division. And there's a lot of people who think that Denver could be the dark horse. They could be like the 2016 Jags. They could be like the 2018 Bears, right? I think the Chargers could easily finish second in that division, and I would pick them to probably be a playoff team. It all just kind of depends, obviously, on how all the other records look in the conference. But I don't see any reason as to why it is that the Chargers can't be a playoff team. Taylor has never been as turnover prone as Rivers, and while he is not the passer, he is more of an athlete than Rivers has ever been. Taylor fits today's NFL better than Rivers does because he's mobile, he can run, he can throw on the run, he can outrun linebackers, he can outrun defensive ends. He's not gonna, lower his shoulder and mow down a safety or a corner, but he can make guys miss. I really do think he could do a lot of what Lamar Jackson did. But people, they just don't give him the respect because his passing numbers aren't super flashy. But his play on the field is better than the stats dictate. The stats do not always tell the full story. And the Chargers, I think given their schedule, they have an easy schedule this year. Taylor is an efficient passer. They've got solid weapons. I think Anthony Lynn really does like him. They've got a great defense to back him up. There's no reason as to why it is that the Chargers should not be number one on this list. Look at their division. The NFC North? Are you kidding me? You think that the... I'm gonna calm myself down for a second. Hold on. The NFC North. You really think that the Lions have the best shot? And they use a method, I think it's called DVOA. They use a metric. I don't care what the metric is. If the metric says that the Lions have the best shot to go from worst to first this coming season, your metric is wrong. I do not believe for a second. If your metric predicted them to go from worst to first last season and they went from worse to worser, what are you doing? Right? Why are you listening to this? If it predicts the Lions again, why would you not just throw away the system? Throw away the metric because it's bad. It's garbage. I think that the Lions are going to be, let me go in, here's a little spoiler. I think the Lions are going to be one of the top 10 worst teams in the NFL this coming season. I really do. They have a terrible schedule. It's murderer's row. Matt Patricia, by all accounts, at least according to Darius Slay, he doesn't have the locker room. Yes, he can bring in some New England guys. He can bring in Kyle Van Noy, and he can bring in Jamie Collins. He can sign some of these guys. But other guys apparently don't like him. Snacks Harrison talked about how this was his hardest season as a pro ever, and he actually contemplated retirement after this season. And I don't know what's special about Matthew Stafford. It's a thing, like, the talent is there. I will give it to people. The talent is there. But then when it comes to that dog, the playing, the making the plays that count, making the throws that count, he doesn't seem to do it consistently enough. And he hasn't. He has been in the league 11 years. He has not won a playoff game. Am I saying it's all his fault? No. But the Lions defense, it's not going to be great. The Lions offense, it's probably going to be average. I like their receivers. I really do. I think they have a up-and-coming tight end. Their offensive line is okay in some areas, but isn't great. Their running back situation, I'm not a big fan of, even though I like Kerryon Johnson, but I'm not a big fan of it. I just don't see the hype. Every single year, there are lists that come out and they talk about who the top quarterbacks are in the league and everything. And Matthew Stafford is always on this list, and they talk about his arm strength and they talk about his ability to throw the football. And the record does not show he's one of the best quarterbacks in the league. His playing against winning football teams doesn't show he's one of the best quarterbacks in the league. And people, there are those who use the same argument with Carson Wentz. But Carson Wentz, I don't think he's ever had the talent that Matt Stafford had around him. Matt Stafford at one point had Megatron and Golden Tate around him. Obviously now Kenny Golladay. And you look at like what Carson Wentz has had to work with. He had Aguilar, who has been a drop machine. You look at Jordan Matthews, where the only place he seems to be good at, though, is in Philadelphia. Obviously he had Deshaun Jackson for 2 games. Two or one game. I think even one game. He had Deshaun Jackson for a game. He had Alshon Jeffrey, who runs about like a 6-flat 40. So, he's had some weapons. I'd say he's had probably better tight ends than Matt Stafford has had in his career. But receiver-wise, the overall talent, no. I'm not gonna buy into that. It could just simply be that Matt Stafford isn't a force multiplier, right? Some guys have a lot of talent, but they just don't make the other guys around them better. Jay Cutler had a lot of talent, but he was prickly, and he was hard to get along with. He was very aloof. Now, is it like he tried to be a bad guy? No. Is it like he tried to be hard to get along with? No. It's just his personality. And sometimes it's just how people are. I'm not saying that, Jay Cutler, by all accounts, I'm sure he's a nice guy. I'm sure he's a great, great person. But he was hard to get along with. All the talent in the world, all the arm talent especially, it never really materialized. Stafford, all the arm talent in the world. One of the strongest arms in the league over the last decade. He's not necessarily as prickly. I've never heard anything about him being hard to get along with. But they don't win. Just like Cutler with the Bears or Cutler with the Broncos. They didn't really win. You have like a season here or there, but then the rest of the seasons are mediocre or you're bottom of your division. And I just don't think that the Lions deserve to be the number one team back-to-back years that has the best chance to go from worst to first. I think that the Chargers have a significantly better chance. If I was going to pick any team, it would most likely be the Chargers. But that is just me. Anyways, coming up next, final topic of the day. I'm going to predict my top 10 worst teams this coming season. I'm going to get into that coming up next, final segment. Thank you for tuning in.
Check out the show built around the women of MMA. From the UFC to the extreme cage fighting, we got the fights covered.
Listen.
It's the Golden State Media Concepts Women's MMA Podcast. The latest news of upcoming fights, discussions of previous matches. Join us as we talk to and about the biggest names in women's mixed martial arts, past, present, and future. When it's the women's fight game, you know where to listen to. The Golden State Media Concepts Women's MMA Podcast.
Welcome back to the GSMC Football Podcast. Last segment of the day, my top 10. I'm going to predict the top 10 worst NFL teams this coming season. The last segment talked a little bit about ESPN's worst to first list that I think is ridiculous. 2 straight years they have predicted that the Lions are going to be the team, the most likely team to go from worst in their division to first in their division. I do not agree. The Lions last year stayed the worst, and this season I think once again they are going to have the worst. They have a ridiculously tough schedule. It is a top 10 schedule in terms of toughness, at least on paper. So I'm not with it. I'm not with it, ESPN. Fix your metric. Find something else, because whatever it is that you're doing, it isn't working. Anyways, so this season, I have talked about how I think it's going to be hard for certain teams. I think teams that have new head coaches, new quarterbacks, things like that, new offensive systems, all that stuff, I think it's going to be really difficult. I think the teams that are going to have the most success will be the teams like a Seattle, like a Kansas City, like the Rams. You know, these teams where they have the same head coach, they have the same offensive system, they have the same quarterback. These teams where they haven't really changed too much. And there's teams that have a quarterback going into their second year. The Giants, the Jags, some of these other teams, but they have new head coaches, or the team was just gutted, different things like that kind of play into it. COVID has messed up a lot, especially when it comes to training camps and the amount of practice that these rookies are going to get. That's why I think teams like the Bengals and the Dolphins could really struggle if they start their rookies, which the Bengals are going to. It's kind of up in the air on what the Dolphins are going to do, but I think they will start Tua. So anyways, we're going to do this going from 1 to 10, 1 being the team I think that's going to be the worst in the league, and 10 being a team that's still bad, but it's just going to be, it'll at least have maybe 5 or 6 wins. Now, the way I'm doing this, I didn't predict record. I thought about doing it. I'm not going to predict the record. I'm just giving you guys the order in which I believe these teams will be ranked this season. So I looked at things like how tough their schedule actually was. I looked at receiving cores. I looked at the quarterback situation, the head coach situation. I looked at all that stuff, but I am not going to predict a record or anything like that because I just think that the NFL is a bit too, there's too much luck involved. Because the NFL, it really is. Sometimes it's a fumble, it's just an unlucky pick, the ball bounces in the right direction, some bad luck with the refs, like anything can happen in the NFL, and that's why people love the NFL. One year, a team can be out of the playoffs, the next year, they can be in the playoffs, it just all depends. Anyways, at number 1, I have the New York Jets. I think that the Jets, I did look at their schedule, there's a chance this team, I think, could win 1 or 2 games. I think there's a real shot this team is going to win only 1 or 2 games. First of all, they have the second hardest schedule in the NFL. They open the season against the Bills, the Niners, the Colts, and the Broncos. During the season, they also face the Chiefs, the Seahawks, the Rams, the Chargers. You can probably say all of those are going to be losses, and they face the Bills twice. They face New England twice. I think those could be 2 losses. Darnold does not do well against their defense. I think there's a real shot that the Jets could be 1-15, 2-14. Hell, there's a chance they could be 0-16. I'm not going to predict it. But I think there's a real chance they could be just one of the worst teams. Who does Sam Darnold have to throw to? Who is his top receiver? They let go of Robbie Anderson, Quincy Enunwa. He could never stay healthy. Their tight end situation is bad. I don't know who on earth he's throwing to. Their running back situation with Le'Veon Bell. I like Le'Veon, but their offensive line isn't that great. It should be better than it was last year, but I'm not going to predict it's going to just mesh and look amazing. Jamal Adams is gone. Mosley opted out. They got rid of Leonard Williams on defense. What are they working with? I think they got rid of Tremaine Johnson, who wasn't really performing well anyways. But just what are they working with? Adam Gase, by all accounts, is not the guy. Jamal Adams excoriated him. I think the Jets are going to be the worst team in the NFL, and that's why I think there's a real chance they move off of Sam Darnold. I would not be surprised if they looked to trade, if they looked to trade Darnold, and they drafted Trevor Lawrence or Justin Fields, and they said, all right, let's reboot this. And they got a new head coach, by the way, as well. At number 2, I have the Dolphins. They have the 3rd toughest schedule in the league. I think that through 8 games, they could probably be 1-7. And now I'm doing this as if Tua was going to start. Now, even if Fitzpatrick did start, I don't know how good it's going to look. They lost Allen Hurns to an opt-out. Albert Wilson opted out. So they still have Devontae Parker. Like, that's something. But, like, their offensive line isn't great. Their running back situation isn't great. Their receivers outside of Devontae Parker aren't anything really to be excited about. Their tight end, they have Mike Gesicki, who was a young, you could say emerging tight end. He is getting better. But, I mean, it's just 2 guys. And while I think Brian Flores is a good head coach, and I think that they added some good pieces to the defense, I think they will be improved in some areas. That tough of a schedule, and you're gonna throw Tua in there, I don't think that the Dolphins are gonna have, I don't think they're gonna have great success. I just don't. I think Tua, while I like Tua going forward, I think his rookie season is going to be very tough, especially given the limited practices and limited time that he has had to really build a rapport with his receivers. And really, again, 2 of their top 3 receivers are gone. Now, I think they are getting an impressive rookie back from last year, Williams, who had really flashed. He got hurt last year, so they do get him back. But again, it's kind of Devontae Parker or bust at receiver. So at number 3, I have the Bengals. The Bengals, the only reason why I have them at 3 and not 1 or 2, because they are guaranteed to start a rookie. So no matter what, they're going to start an inexperienced quarterback who really only had 1 year of starting in college. But the Bengals do have an easier schedule. I do have questions about their head coach. I don't know if Zach Taylor can coach. I really don't. The Bengals were terrible last year. They got the number 1 overall pick for a reason, and they drafted Burrow. While I think Burrow could be good, I don't necessarily think that the Bengals have the greatest supporting cast. Now on offense, they do have some interesting pieces. I don't really like their offensive line, but I like Joe Mixon as a running back. He can, catch and run the football. I like him. I do like AJ Green, even though he's older. I'd like to see if he can still be even 80% of the receiver he was. Tyler Boyd is good. Don't really know what they're doing at tight end. Their defense isn't great. I think the Bengals are going to be a bad team. I think they will be drafting again in the top 5. But I just think that they will be better at least than the Dolphins and the Jets because their schedule is easier. So I have the Bengals at number 3. At number 4, I have the New York Giants. Who was their head coach? I have never heard of this guy. He was a special teams coordinator for New England. What is his name? Joe. I don't even remember what the guy's name was. Joe Judge. Yeah, Joe Judge. So they have a new head coach to go along with Daniel Jones. They're gonna have a new system because it was Pat Shurmur's system and he is gone. I think they probably could have at least attempted to keep him around as an offensive coordinator, but they didn't even do that. Daniel Jones was a turnover machine last year. And while not necessarily through the air, like he wasn't a high interception guy, he was a big fumble guy. He could not hang on to the ball for the life of him. I think he fumbled 17 times, and while that is a correctable issue, you can get better at that. They lost their left tackle to an opt-out, Nate Solder, and although Nate Solder is not a household name among tackles, especially once he left New England, he was their best offensive lineman probably outside of, Will Hernandez? So, their tackle situation now is not good. I know that they did draft a rookie, but he is just a rookie. So, I don't know where they're going to put him at. I think he was going to be right, but Nate Solder's now gone, so will they maybe move him to left? I don't know. And then, you just look at their division. Their division is loaded with pass rushers. Washington, their D-line is stacked. The Cowboys, their D-line, especially if they do get Randy Gregory back, they have Lawrence, they got some other pieces there. Their D-line, pretty good. And the Eagles, that pass rush, Brandon Graham is still there, Fletcher Cox, they still got some good pieces there. While they might be older, Fletcher Cox is still one of the most dominant defensive tackles in the league, still one of the best pass rushing defensive tackles in the league. It is nothing to sneeze at. I think the Giants will be picking high again in this draft, and I would just aim at maybe looking to take a tackle again. Protect Daniel Jones, maybe get him a number one receiver. I did like Slayton, so there is that to look at. I do like Evan Ingram at tight end. I just think he needs to stay healthy. But I do like some of the pieces on the Giants, but new system, young quarterback. He was a turnover machine last year, had a fumble issue, and this new unproven head coach who was a special teams coordinator. I just don't know how I feel about that. At number 5, I have the Raiders. The Raiders, I really struggled with this because they have an easier schedule. Their schedule, I think, is in the 20s. So you would think that the Raiders should be able to improve from a 7-9 record now that their schedule is even easier. But I don't think that's going to be the case. The Raiders' defense is bad. Even though they've added some players to it, their defense has not been good. Even the year that Derek Carr was an MVP candidate, their defense was still not good. And they fell apart down the stretch last year. Like, they kind of got exposed. At one point, it looked like the Raiders were going to be a playoff team, and I think they got exposed. And even though they do get Josh Jacobs back, he is just a running back. What kind of a difference is he really going to make to the win total? I think through the first 5 games of the season, the Raiders could be 1-4. They could be 0-5. And I think that they will put in Marcus Mariota. John Gruden has never been a fan of Derek Carr. I don't care what John Gruden says. You heard him back on Monday Night Football. He has never exactly been a fan of Derek Carr. He can say whatever he wants. I don't believe it. And they brought in Marcus Mariota. He was a great backup. He showed that he could be a great backup in Tennessee. He showed he was a true professional. He lost his job to Tannehill. But again, I think Mariota could be a franchise guy if a team just uses him the way Oregon used him. Let him run a system like they're gonna do for Lamar, run a system like I think the Chargers will do with Taylor. I think 5 games, 6 games in, they are gonna go to Marcus Mariota, and they could look to either trade or just get rid of Derek Carr. I really do. So I have the Raiders at number 5. At number 6, I have the Lions, for the simple fact of I don't trust Matt Stafford and I don't trust Patricia. I really do think that the Lions could look to fire Patricia after this year. And as for Stafford, I mean, I think Stafford, he's too good to not at least win 5 or 6 games to at least keep them out of like the top 5 picks or whatever it might be. But nonetheless, I just don't think they're going to be that impressive. I still think they will be one of the worst teams in the league. I wouldn't even be surprised if they did win less than that. Stafford, I'm impressed with his numbers. His numbers look really, really good. He's the youngest quarterback, whatever it was, to 30,000 yards passing, or whatever his achievement was. But I think a lot of his numbers are hollow, and they just don't really mean anything. So I think that the Lions will once again be picking higher. Some of these teams are a bit difficult to place because they are close together. Some of these teams do have very similar schedules in terms of toughness, and the talent is, pick and choose what it is that you do like. So it can be a bit hard to place these. But at number 7, I have the Jags, and I think you could flip them with the Lions. But I have the Jags at number 7. I like their offense. The offensive line, I like the Jags. It's really good. I like Linder, their center. I like their guard, is it Norwell, that they brought over from Carolina. I think he had a bit of a down year last year, but overall I like him. I like their young tackle Cam Robinson. I think they got some good pieces there. And I like Gardner Minshew. He was the highest graded rookie last season. He was better than Kyler. He was better than Daniel Jones. He was better than those guys. And I think that honestly, I think if Jacksonville embraces him, he could be their guy. Because I liked what I saw from him last year. But he's not a household name. I do think that Jacksonville, he could end up like in a Josh Rosen situation, though his showing was much better than Rosen's was, at least in their respective rookie seasons. But I do think they could even look to move off of Minshew quicker than they should. I think they could open the season 2-2, but then things do get tough, and of course they get the Texans twice. They will face the Lions. Stafford is probably going to carve up their defense. They do face the Chargers. I think the Chargers can cause a lot of problems for people because of their offense and because of their defense. I think that the Jags will be able to win a few games. I don't think they're going to be a 2-win, a 3-win team. I think that they have more talent than that, but I don't really like their defense. Myles Jack took a big step back. Telvin Smith just basically retired. They lost Ramsey. They lost Boye. They traded Calais Campbell. Yannick Ngakoue isn't there playing because he doesn't want to be on that team anymore. So I do think that the Jags will be bad, but I like their receiving core. I like Minshew. I do like Fournette, though I think he's a bit of a throwback running back. He's not very versatile through the air. But nonetheless, I have the Jags at number 7. At number 8, and you can probably say I have them a bit too high, and I would go ahead and I believe that, but I think this just has to do with the respect I have for the head coach. I have Washington at number 8. Now, I'm not really a fan of Dwayne Haskins. His rookie year, I didn't really see anything from him. Now, granted, it's Washington, and he was with Jay Gruden. So, there's only so much that I can really hold against him. And then, of course, Jay Gruden got fired, and then they became like a very run-centric offense, which probably benefited him. And I think that Alex Smith will be great. If Alex Smith can be back as a backup at least and be out there on the field, I think that he will be a great teacher for Dwayne. But I love Ron Rivera. I think Washington has real pieces on their defense that Ron Rivera can really, infuse his mentality into. And I mean, you look at Carolina, right? Carolina, they didn't always have a great offense, but the thing that Carolina had consistently was a really good defense to back up Cam Newton. I think that I think that they can play a control the ball kind of offense, or at least they can attempt to play a control the ball kind of offense, and they can play really, really strong defense. I don't necessarily like the back end of their defense, but I like their pass rush and I like their linebackers to an extent. Their linebackers not so much, but I like their pass rush. So I think they'll still be bad, right? I still think this could be a bad team, but I like Ron Rivera. They have real defensive pieces. They do have an easier schedule. I like Terry McLaurin. I think that he really flashed as a rookie. So I think Dwayne Haskins and he could form a nice relationship there. But nonetheless, I have the Washington football team at number 8. At number 9, I have the Panthers. Now, this might surprise some people, but I'm going to be completely honest. Look, I'm not a big fan of Teddy Bridgewater. I'm just not. Now, what he did with the Saints, that was great. What he did the one year that the Vikings went to the playoffs with him, great. But even that year, he was such a game manager. None of his numbers screamed starter in the NFL. They had Adrian Peterson, who was running the football like a madman, and they played amazing defense. That is why they won the games. And Teddy Bridgewater, he can convert some third downs with his legs. He's an accurate passer. He doesn't necessarily have a great arm, but he's not a turnover machine. But I don't think that's going to be enough. Carolina's defense is not good anymore. They've got some good offensive pieces. I like their receiver Moore. I like McCaffrey. But they have a rookie head coach. I don't know what it's going to look like. Their offensive line is questionable. There's a chance that Russell Okung retires because of COVID. He's not sure he wants to play. There's a chance he could retire. And then just look at their division. They get the Bucs twice. Do you think Teddy, in his, let's face it, his noodle-ish arm is going to beat the Buccaneers? Probably not. They get the Saints twice. Do you think he's going to... No. The Saints roster is much, much better than Carolina's. They get the Falcons twice. Could they maybe split the games with the Falcons? Yeah, probably. But then they also face, just to name a few other teams, they face the Bears, the Chiefs, the Broncos, the Vikings. This is not going to be a great football team. I think Teddy, if anything, is a bridge quarterback. If the Carolina is bad enough, I could see them taking a quarterback in this draft. Wouldn't it be a hell of a story if they managed to get the number 1 overall pick and draft Trevor Lawrence? Wouldn't that be something? Oh my god. Talk about a story. That would be incredible. I don't think it's going to happen. I don't think they're going to be that bad. But I think the Panthers are still going to be one of the top 10 worst teams in the league. I think Teddy's a great guy. I do like him. When he has a good roster and a good defense, it works. But other than that, I think he is an average, lesser-end quarterback. That's just me, though. And at number 10, I have the Cardinals. I think that the Cardinals will be better this season. I looked at their schedule. I think they could start this season 4-1 or 3-2. All just kind of depends on how the ball bounces. But I think that they could start the season looking pretty good and looking like a real contender in the NFC West. But then their schedule gets tougher. There's a reason they have a top 10 schedule. I think their schedule is tied for 5th in the league or 8th. 5th or 8th. It's one of the two. But either way, it's top 10. And so it gets harder after week 5 against the Jets, right? The Jets is kind of like their last cakewalk game, but then after that, they run into buzzsaws. And Kyler Murray, all the credit in the world to his rookie season. He looked good, in spots, and I think that he can improve, but he was, he was next to Deshaun Watson. He was the worst quarterback in the league when it came to running himself into sacks and running himself into pressures. I like DeAndre and Fitzgerald and Kirk. I think that those are great pieces to put around him, and I think that their offense could be really fun to watch, but I still don't like their defense. I do like Budda Baker and Peterson and Chandler Jones, and I think they have an interesting rookie. But it's not enough. To me, it's just not enough pieces. I think that the Cardinals will still be a bad team this year. I still think they will be one of the top 10 worst teams, even though I think their offense could be very, very exciting. I just think their defense is atrocious, and that teams will have a field day on them no matter what. And Peterson, he is getting older, though he's a good corner. He is getting older. Chandler Jones is only getting older, though I still think he's good. Their offensive line is bad, and they lost their right tackle. He opted out for the season, so I think that's gonna hurt Kyler Murray even more. I just don't think the Cardinals are gonna be that great. I really don't. There was one other team I did think about maybe putting at the 10 spot. I thought maybe putting New England there because they do have the toughest schedule in the league, and their team was gutted by the opt-outs, and they lost a lot of free agents, and they didn't necessarily bring anybody in. They did bring in Cam, but what is he working with? But I just have too much respect for Bill Belichick to say they're going to be a bad team. I have too much respect for Bill and what he has done over the last 20 years to say that he loses Tom Brady and then the team is going to be one of the 10 worst in the league. I just don't think that's going to happen. But I did think maybe about putting them at 10. I think it could have been a toss-up between them and the Cardinals, but nonetheless, I put the Cardinals in at number 10. So my top 10 worst teams in the NFL for this coming season, my prediction, it will be the Jets, the Dolphins, the Bengals, the Giants, the Raiders, the Lions, the Jags, Washington Football Team, Panthers, and Cardinals. And I am saying it's going to be in that order. I don't know what the records are going to be, but that is my prediction for who the top 10 worst teams are going to be. I'm really looking forward to this football season. I really am. I really want to see what the product looks like. I'm very interested to see how the season goes about. I'm interested to see if there's a disaster, right? I'm hoping there's not a disaster, but I'm very interested to see what happens if COVID breaks out amongst the team. What is the NFL going to do about the schedule? I think that's a real question. I'm looking forward to the season. When it comes to college, I'm hoping for the best for these kids, and I feel so bad for some of these kids whose season has been taken away from them, and who aren't going to get the chance to show their skill, or who, they might just even say they might try and play during the spring, and then they might get hurt, and their draft stock will fall. It's an ugly situation, but this is the world that we live in right now. But anyways, thank you for tuning into the GSMC Football Podcast. I would like to ask that you please remember to subscribe to the show and write a nice review. That really helps us out. Also, if you can, please follow us on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. Thank you, and have a good night.
You've been listening to the Golden State Media Concepts Football Podcast, part of the Golden State Media Concepts Podcast Network. You can find this show and others like it at www.gsmcpodcast.com. Download our podcast on iTunes, Stitcher, SoundCloud, and Google Play. Just type in GSMC to find all the shows from the Golden State Media Concepts Podcast Network, from movies to music, from sports to entertainment, and even weird news. You can also follow us on Twitter and on Facebook. Thank you, and we hope you have enjoyed today's program.